This is Monocle on Fashion, a show on Monocle Radio offering global perspectives and nuanced conversation on fashion and style. I'm Natalie Theodosi, your host and Monocle's fashion director. This has been such a critical week for the fashion industry, with some of the most anticipated designer debuts finally taking place over the last 7 days in Paris. We've seen Jonathan Anderson's first and highly divisive women's wear collection for Dior, Pierpaolo Piccioli's debut at Balenciaga, which left me wanting to dig deeper into his vision for the brand, and Jack McCallow and Lázaro Hernandez's fresh and optimistic first effort at Loewe, along with new chapters at Mugler, Carven, and Jean-Paul Gaultier. As we record this Monday's episode, I'm getting ready to attend the Miu Miu and Tom Brown shows, two of the biggest crowd pleasers. And to end a big week, teams Monocle and Confect will also be attending Mathieu Blazy's first runway show for Chanel this evening, perhaps the most important debut of them all. But before we go to the Grand Palais to witness this historic moment, our first stop is with Chanel in Tokyo at the house's Le 19e exhibition, showcasing the works of all artisans under the Chanel umbrella.
Japan and France, in that sense, we do have this thing that I consider a quality, that is of protecting our craft.
We will also be hearing from photographer Kuba Dabrowski about the changing street style scene in Paris and Milan.
Trends are gone. There's this kind of game of musical chairs going up on top, and it also translates into what happens outside the shows.
For this week's big interview, we catch up with one of Paris fashion's most beloved figures, Sarah Andelman, who brought a lot of joy to the city over the last week for reviving her famous concept store, Colette, though temporarily, as part of a new exhibition, Virgil Abloh, The Codes, honoring the late Abloh and his impact on fashion.
He had a clear vision from the beginning. He knew where he was going. He knew what he wanted to express.
This and more coming up on Monocle on Fashion. La Galerie du 19e is a Parisian cultural space established by Chanel to preserve France's artisanal skills and showcase its unique savoir-faire. Now, the house has embarked on an international project, La Galerie du 19e Tokyo, taking up residence in Tokyo's Mori Tower and encouraging collaboration and cultural dialogue between French and Japanese artisans. Monocle's Ryuma Takahashi visited the exhibition and spoke with Clara Imbert, a French visual artist who has provided works in collaboration with Nambu ironware craftsman Suzuki Morihisa.
I was invited by the 19M to collaborate with a Japanese artist, Suzuki Morihisa, who's a craftsman working with cast iron. And I work mostly with sculpture, installations, notions of sciences. It's inspired by sciences, astronomy, kind of the big mysteries of our life on Earth.
So what were you doing for this exhibition?
In this exhibition, you can see some pieces in the forest. I consider them a little bit like talismans, I would say. There are 3 works from a series called Artifacts. Because we are in a forest, and my work has also a lot to do with symbolism and notions of mysticism and legends, I thought I would take some symbols from sacred geometry and symbols that you find in nature that are quite mysterious and work around that. And you can also find those patterns in the artisan Suzuki-san's work. So I created those small totemic figures made out of iron and Suzuki's pieces. And they're also taking those sort of geometrical shapes that you can find in the, collective unconscious that are kind of present as well in nature.
Yes, you collaborated with Japanese Nambu ironware craftsmen. So could you tell me about what you felt and what inspired you during that process?
Well, actually, I'm very interested in Japanese traditions in general for many years. I didn't knew much about the history of iron, actually, in Japan. And so it was for me a way of learning about this traditional craft. And I think it's very interesting because we work with the same material, but in very different ways. And what I love is the sense of time and a sort of ritual approach to the material and how it's being used. And I think it's very interesting the way that, I know only Suzuki-san as an artisan with this craft, but I really love the soul that's being put in each object. I think it's a very interesting process. And had a lot of technical questions throughout the collaborations. And it was super interesting because even the patina that he used, for example, he told me that it comes from cashews. There was those little moments that I was so surprised as well, by how things are made for him. And I thought it was very interesting.
In this exhibition, I think Japanese and French tradition intersect. Did you notice any differences or similarities between both cultures and traditions?
I really think Japan and France, in that sense, we do have this thing that I consider a quality, that is of protecting our crafts. And 19M is really doing that for us in Paris, and is very important to continue the traditions. But I think also that traditions can evolve. They do not necessarily need to be that stiff. Suzuki-san, for example, it's usually a traditional thing to pass on the craft from father to son. He learned from his mother, who was the first one of all those generations to kind of decide she wanted to do that and stand up for it. It really moved me as a woman also working, with the craft like metal, which is pretty much male dominated in general. I thought it was so interesting, because in the end, traditions are so important and they're also made to be challenged once in a while. In this exhibition, you have that challenge in a very positive way.
That was artist Clara Imbert speaking to Monocle's Ryuma Takahashi. La Galerie du 19e Tokyo is open at Tokyo's Mori Tower from now until the 20th of October. And now we're back to Paris to talk to photographer Kuba Dabrowski, who has spent the week shooting street style outside all of the city's shows for fashion's media of record, Women's Wear Daily. For more than a decade, documenting what the editors and the influencers wear to the shows has been as critical as the clothes being presented on the runway. At times, the whole operation feels like it has gotten way out of hand, with guests wearing the most extreme outfits to attract attention and even blocking traffic. Our producer, Lily Austin, grabbed Kuba on his way to a shoot to hear about how the scene is evolving and perhaps the end of the trend on Fashion Week streets.
I think my main takeaway this season regarding to trends is that trends are gone. And we are in this transition time. There's this kind of like game of musical chairs going up on top of the fashion food chain. And it also translates into what happens outside the shows. And I think there's a lot of confusion, I'd say, in terms of influencing, pushing new product by brands and kind of like creating the trends because they have to keep the collections secret. They have to keep the audience waiting. So it's hard for them just to, throw a product at influencers. So we've been seeing a lot of that. People wearing old designer to new designer show, or people who would show up in a top to bottom outfit provided to them by the brand, showing up in their actual clothes, which is interesting to shoot. But also in terms of spotting the trends, it's much more diffused and harder to define, which is good for me as an observer, because it feels more real, less constructed. But trends are not clear, I'd say. I feel like they used to be created in an artificial way. It's an industry of people like me shooting outside the shows, influencers, editors, being given looks by the brands that, try to push one trend or the other and have people photographed organically, quote unquote, in front of the show. This season, it has not happened so much because of all the changes going on top. And internal aesthetics of the brand, like the whole communication strategy is changing. And I feel like I've seen less of professional influencers out in the streets than I usually do. More kind of like industry people, like actual industry people, editors, buyers, etc., etc. The shows are smaller, or even if they're bigger, the divisions are stronger. So I think there's less kind of like controlled street style going on. Brands usually give a limited number of photographers access to the show venue, so we can show street style within the courtyard of guests arriving to the show. So you're separate from the paparazzi crowd and just, random accidental tourists. So we get to get inside and shoot in a more or less controlled environment. This season, these things were very, very limited. Less and less photographers are getting that. And also, even if you get it, the situation inside of a courtyard is oftentimes very controlled. You cannot just freely roam around. You're kind of like have to stay in one area, and this becomes kind of like a stop and go for influencers or for people coming into the show. That was a change as well. And I'm not complaining. I'm just kind of like noticing things. I'm fine with everything. I'm here to document. So it's not like it's wrong. It's just what happens. And this is what I've been saying. Also, fashion, it's about distinction. And especially this kind of like top echelons, it's about who you know, which brand is on your radar, who are you wearing. And it's a little bit like wearing a, band t-shirt. And it's super cool to wear a t-shirt of a band that nobody apart from you and 5 of your friends has heard of. And I think it's a little bit like that in fashion right now. The kind of like top people are not screaming, visually screaming, I'm a fashion person, look at me, how extravagant I am. It's more subtle. It's like for the people in the know. Okay, I have shoes by this brand. I know.
So you've been in Milan and now in Paris. Do you see any differences between the two? There are obviously a lot of stereotypes about the kind of style at the big four between London, New York, Paris, Milan. Do you see that between those two cities? Have you seen that this season?
I always do. And Paris feels much more organic. It always does. And I think it's nice to have something that's worn in. Even if you're wearing, the new collection, it's nice to have shoes that are not kind of like brand new, like to put together with it. Whereas I feel like in Milan, it doesn't go. Everything is pressed, brand new, shiny, and kind of like straight out of the box, so to say. Yeah, so that's the main difference. Also, Paris is much more diverse. You have Valentino show, and you have Balenciaga show, and then you have Comme des Garçons, or Miu Miu, or Enfant Riche Déprimé. And each of the brands have the different following, different buyers, different press is interested in them. So the audience from show to show changes dramatically. It's kind of like changing worlds, like teleporting yourself. And it's amazing. Milan is not like that. Milan is more about craft, money, and, very simple idea of luxury, I'd say.
And just finally, street style photography has, with the rise of fashion shows over the last sort of 20 years, it became really, really important. But obviously in the last few years, fashion shows have, as you've mentioned, they've got smaller, the industry has been struggling. The landscape has changed a lot. Do you think that street photography is still an important part of Fashion Week?
I think street style photography is now that big of a thing within the industry that you have to make sub-definition. You have to kind of like think in sub-category in order to think about it logically. Because when it comes to influencer-infused, strictly commercial street style, then I think it's kind of like drying. It doesn't make much sense probably for the brands. And I think they have their metrics and they know if it works or not. And I think judging from how they treat influencers and photographers associated with that type of street style, I think this is becoming less relevant. But street style, the way I think I do it, is important. Also, like even as a simple fact of an archive. I mean, my mission, apart from providing content for WWD. It's also documenting what's happening. And me as a person, I love looking at from the 90s or the 70s of how people used to dress out in the streets of Paris or New York. And somebody has to take these images so people in the future can look at what now looked like. And then shooting for WWD, I'm shooting around the shows, but I'm shooting all the aspects. I'm shooting other photographers. Of course, I'm shooting models and people arriving at the shows, but I'm also shooting students who just hang around. And it's also part of the scene. And I feel, this kind of street style as a documentation of the scene, it's always valid.
That was photographer Kuba Dabrowski speaking to Monocle on Fashion's producer Lily Austin. Kuba shoots some of the most evocative street and backstage photography during Fashion Week, so do check his work out on wwd.com. And now let's move to the center of Paris Fashion Week, the Grand Palais, where the former concept store Colette has a pop-up. I spoke to Sarah Andelman, who founded and ran the shop with her mother until 2017, when, despite its popularity, she decided to shut Colette's stores and move on to new adventures, including a creative consultancy called Just an Idea. We found a quiet corner outside the Colette store, and while the crowds were coming in and out, we spoke about her decision to launch this pop-up in memory of her friend and collaborator, Virgil Abloh.
When the team from Virgil Abloh Archives informed me about their project, even if it was last minute, just before summer, and said we would love to have you involved for the retail part, it's true, I didn't think twice. I said, yes, of course, you can count on me, because Virgil was so important in our history, and I have so much admiration for everything he did that I thought it was a good opportunity, flashback just for 10 days, just in this context of the Grand Palais to do it. So there is no rules, and it's fun to see, to work again with the same thing and to try to give a little of the same way. I think the exhibition informs about who was Virgil for the younger ones. I met some young kids who heard a lot about Colette and never had the chance to come, so it gives them we cannot say the same thing at all, but it gives them a little
taste.
Voilà, exactly.
And is that really a one-off? I have to ask you selfishly.
No, of course, no. Especially it reminds me also what it is, how it is. So no, it's definitely.
Yeah. And it's interesting you said they contacted you in the summer, and it was quite a last-minute project, because just walking through now, it felt like something that's so well thought and that it must have taken a long time. I was in my mind, but what was the process like these few months of putting it together, working with the foundation?
So of course I speak only about the shop, but first I went through what was left from Virgil alive. So there is his own label, Canary Yellow, where he was producing his own T-shirts, stickers, keychains. So they had dead stock of this that we put in priority. Then checking which collaboration he did was still available. So for example, there is Alessi that we have, some books, of course. Then we decided to do T-shirts, as he would have done, of kind of merch souvenir, but also collaboration with all the partners, the artists you worked with, where it goes from Art of L'Automobile, who is in Paris as well, to Stray Rats, to Babylon. So all these friends from Virgil accepted to do a design for a T-shirt. And then it's a mix of some, little mini goodies and some skateboard, because I think Virgil was like the skate community. We have some music speaker. We try to represent his world, the diversity of his world.
Yeah, and that idea of the mix of bringing books and magazines and merch and also maybe more high-end product has always been at the heart of Colette, at the heart of what Virgil was doing. Why do you think it appeals so much to people? It was important to have the mix again in this show.
No, but for me it's very organic, and I think, yes, there is the Assoline book on Louis Vuitton, limited edition, which is 1,200 euro, to a little pen, which is 3 euro. But I consider these products all relevant, and I think maybe people will understand that I think if you cannot afford an expensive print on book, at least you have the pleasure to see it, to enjoy it, to know more about where it's coming from, what the story behind. But for me, all these products, I always compare to a puzzle, and I think it's important to have multiple choice, multiple origins of products. And I think you are right. Virgil was thinking that way too, and I didn't want to limit the proposal to only one category of products.
And it reminds me, looking at also the big crowds of people here just coming to enjoy the experience, and this idea of prices across every spectrum of this more democratic nature of fashion that you, Virgil, had started. But I'm curious, do you think that fashion has gone back to being a bit more exclusive now?
I don't know where it's coming fashion, and especially retail, because I heard that it's very difficult for everybody, even some e-commerce. But here, definitely, the experience, we have a lot of products, most of them. We cannot find them anywhere else. Maybe some will be later when it's closed online, but honestly, I'm not sure. And I think it's part of the experience, because now we can find everything so easily, so everywhere. I think it's to have to do the effort to come and get something like the brown clock or some t-shirts collab only here is very important. And there is many brands. I'm sad they are more interested into profit, into easy solution to give a lot everywhere in all the shops. So finally it's less exciting.
Yeah. And having kind of went back through all the collaborations, Virgil's initial work, did it give you any new perspectives now that time has passed about what made him so special and just generally the impact of his work? Because it's always good to look back, no?
Yes, but what I love, for example, we did a wall painted by artists to make. It's organized by Hugo Vitrani, who is a curator at Palais de Tokyo, and he had this project of exhibition with Virgil, and he worked a lot with Futura. And it was fun to have them do this last-minute action. And I think Virgil was like, let's do it. And there was one of the artists I asked, so you worked a lot with Virgil? He said, yes, we did a collaboration for Off-White, for Louis Vuitton. So I said, you must know his team who worked with him also forever. He said, no, actually, we were just doing WhatsApp. I will send him. And this is so... Virgil, I mean, and I think big company nowadays, everything is so formalized, everything is so official that he was like a sun with lots of stars, so open a conversation with so many different people and giving them a chance, giving them the occasion to push a door and do something that would have been more difficult without his support. So I think this, I still feel it. I knew, but I still feel it very strong during this experience.
And what was your relationship with him? I'm sure there's a lot of WhatsApp conversations and ideas being exchanged.
Very respectful, very inspiring each other. I love that when he was in Paris, he would come to Colette to meet friends, to visit, to see his own collection windows. I saw from the beginning, so this 2008 t-shirt to the development of Pyrex and then Off-White and then all the collabs. So I really saw him growing until Louis Vuitton, which was so well deserved but so unexpected in a way for some of the fashion industry. And he had a clear vision from the beginning. He knew where he was going. He knew what he wanted to express. Nothing would stop him, and I think that's so incredible.
Yeah, and to me, it feels like he left a gap that was never really filled. Even though there is young talent, there is a lot of innovation happening, but not quite what he was doing,
maybe
right?
Not the same energy, for sure.
Yeah. Is there, I mean, when we look forward, talents and people that you're speaking to at the moment, when you look at the landscape that inspire you in similar ways or get you thinking and in the same way that he did?
It's funny, when you say that, I think of talented artists, but more in the art world, in the streetwear world, in the fashion world. I cannot think of someone as open, I don't know how you call it, multidisciplinary as Virgil was, because we didn't even speak about the music, he was DJing, and so it's rare. It was maybe what made him so special and precious to have so many interests and to accumulate. I mean, There is, of course, in a very, very different way. I think Pharrell is a genius with his music, his own brand, streetwear brand, what he's doing at Louis Vuitton. But it's a different scene for sure.
Different, yeah. I mean, we're standing here and just seeing the crowds of people come, and you can just about make your way through the Colette space. How do you feel seeing it? I mean, for me, it was emotional smelling the signature smell.
I don't want people to wait. I don't want people to line. And I see that it's happening, and it's really not. But they do. We do what we can to organize this flow. But it's fun because yesterday we saw some customers we had at Colette 8 years ago, and they didn't change, or they got older, they have kids, and it's like a flashback from past to future. It's a little strange, but I think it's all for Virgil again.
It's amazing to even see people with the bags.
Yeah.
And to smell, I think that familiar smell. Do you find that there is a lot of power still? I mean, we're talking about digital a lot more in AI and all these things, but in bringing people together in retail, but also in this kind of more cultural spaces.
I think you said the key word, cultural, because myself, I love to buy online because I don't want to wait. I don't want to do it any time in the night. But it's true seeing everybody, the energy and some people interacting, and even for us on the backs and the behind the scene, to speak with the security, to make sure tons of little detail is what I love, to work on the display, to place reorders. It's true that there is something that I still do with my consulting company now, just an idea, but it's a little, I'm just, don't reflect so much on just making happen the things and do it. And yes.
And I had read that Virgil said, without you and Colette, Off-White wouldn't exist. And which is so beautiful. And it reminds me of those kind of very special relationships between a boutique and a young designer on the app, taking risks. When we look at the next generation of designers, what do you think retailers need to be thinking about more to support them? Because it is a much tougher landscape.
I think to be generous, to think about the customer, to think about the experience they would have to do, but really to put yourself in the consumer, the visitor's foot shoes, and not to be in Excel sheets with numbers. And so I think you need to observe, to adapt to your city, to adapt to your what you are doing, but to curate and to care, to as simple as this, to dedicate yourself to what you are doing and to really care to put your visitors and your consumers.
And I'm very curious to also get your take more broadly about what's happening in the industry right now. I mean, just a few days ago in Milan, we saw about 5 new debuts. More are coming to Paris this week.
Yes.
More than the specific collections, I'd love to hear what you think about why is this happening to begin with, and is it as important, these changes, as kind of the insiders are making it out to be, and as kind of historical?
No, it's definitely historical to have so many creative directors change, and I think there is eras, there is cycles in fashion forever, so we are at a turning point, and it will be interesting to see how each brand evolves. I also think there is a lot of musical chairs, and we were speaking about young talents, and it's also, yes, these designers are new to these brands, but we know them. We know most of them for more than many years. So we expect what they are doing. And again, I think this big luxury brand, they need to, I know they support young designers with prize, with maybe some accessories, etc. But I think we also need fresh blood. I know that all these new designers are super talented, and I look forward to this collection. But it's important to look beyond and maybe to really give a chance to even younger.
Has there been a moment of surprise or someone that you are very excited about to see what happens?
I wouldn't name especially, but I think I wouldn't like to be one of them because I think it's too many.
Such a tough job.
For sure. And this morning I went to Alain Paul, and I think he's so talented with his inspiration of the dance. Then Cecily Bansen, who I love forever because it's so poetic. But all these designers, it must be. I feel it. Yes, there is an easier way to communicate. We have this Instagram. We have this direct communication with to communicate your message. But also, I feel there is a big, déséquilibre, disbalance between the luxury group and the younger designers, and I think they have to work even harder to exist and be recognized.
Yeah, and like you said, less support because there's more Excel sheets, there's less risk at retail, there's no Colette to buy them.
Exactly. It's difficult. Every day someone asks me, I want to sell my creation in Paris, what would be the good shop? And I tell them, do online on your own thing, but no, it's not the same. Of course, there is Dover Street Market, which is very good, but
yeah, you need more.
Exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of dressing, I noticed your amazing Air Force sneakers. And I mean, that's another conversation. Are sneakers and that kind of world as relevant as they used to be? Has the culture changed?
No, I think it's very, very, very nice from Nike to support this project. I think it makes sense that when we see the wall of all the sneakers developed by Virgil Abloh for Nike, that's such an amazing relationship. But no, all the sneakers did too many sneakers. And I remember already in Colette at 2017 when we closed, there was many drops every week, and it was too much. And now it was all saturated. And I think now a lot of people from my generation, a little younger, are more going into formal shoes or heritage shoes and sneakers. I know sneakers will come back with the right message and partners. And I speak about the everyday. I don't speak about running a marathon, of course. But I think that's a challenge for the big sneaker brands to have this voice they used to have and to find how to have it back. And yes, a project like Tom Sachs finally is very cool because he creates this challenge for the people who want to have the shoes. It's more than just a shoe, and I think that's what people want now. We live in such a fragile world with so many drama. It needs to have a story, to be meaningful, to be more than just one more product, I think.
Big thanks to Sarah Andelman for joining me in the midst of the Paris Fashion Week chaos. And that's all for today's show. Make sure to stay tuned. In next week's episode, we will unpack the rest of Paris Fashion Week, including what we saw at Chanel, with a series of very special panelists. Today's episode was produced and edited by Lily Austin. I'm Natalie Theodosi. Thank you so much for listening.